Hi, and welcome back to Focal Point AFR Talk. You are listening to Focal Point, the home of muscular Christianity on Conservative Talk Radio on the American Family Radio Talk Network. AFR Talk, the most feared, the most dangerous radio network in all of America. By the way, Tim Wildman, the president of the American Family Association, will be on the Kelly File tonight with Megyn Kelly. She's the new rock star of the evening lineup on Fox News. He will be on at, from what we understand, at about 8:10 Central Time, 9:10 Eastern Time. So make the adjustment whatever time zone you're in. But be sure to tune in because you'll get some information there, late-breaking information that a lot of people don't know about. So that's tonight on the Kelly File. Now, the allegation that the American Family Association is a hate group is coming from an organization called the Southern Poverty Law Center, or SPLC for short. And as Kevin McCullough explained, despite the effort of the military in their statement yesterday to say that this instructor at Camp Shelby was a rogue agent acting on his own, just digging stuff up on the internet, we're now finding that this is systemic in the military, that the training of the use of SPLC hate group lists is coming from military brass. I mean, the trainers of the trainers are pointing them toward the SPLC as some kind of a credible source of information. And we want to have our next guest help us sort through whether the SPLC is a credible source or not. I'm honored to welcome to our decision maker line Charlotte Allen. Charlotte Allen is a frequent contributor to the Weekly Standard, which is a conservative website. I'm on that website every single day doing show prep. She's also written for the Wall Street Journal and the LA Times. Again, both of those are sources that I visit every single day and doing show prep, and she's a frequent contributor to all three of those outlets. Charlotte Allen, welcome to Focal Point with Brian Fisher.
Well, I'm glad to be here.
Well, Charlotte, I am wanted to bring you on because on April 15 of this year, you wrote a 7-page expose of the SPLC. So the SPLC has been around since 1971 or so, got started kind of in the civil rights era, and yet they've morphed into something that's much different than what they claimed to be at the beginning or what they appeared to be or maybe even what they were at the beginning. So tell us what your research discovered about the Southern Poverty Law Center.
Well, one of the main things that my research uncovered was that the Southern Poverty Law Center is basically a kind of fundraising machine, and it has successfully raised money for more than 4 decades by alarming liberals who are located nowhere near the South, usually in the Northeast and on the West Coast. And one of its most effective strategies has, in fact, been compiling these lists of hate groups. This kind of they started out with the Ku Klux Klan, started in the late 70s when by that time the Ku Klux Klan was largely defunct, just had a few thousand members left. But somehow Northern liberals are convinced that hundreds of thousands of sheet-robed warriors are riding around on horses and burning crosses and terrorizing minority groups. So this has been an extremely successful vehicle. So during the 90s, after the Timothy McVeigh incident, they decided that they would branch out to militia groups or patriot groups, even though McVeigh was never associated with any of those groups. This, too, turned into a great fundraising device, terrorizing liberals with the notion that there were groups of people arming themselves and ready to assault their fellow countrymen and go on lynching rampages and so forth. And lately, of course, they've branched out into various other groups that they can tag as hate groups, among them the American Family Association and other groups that promote traditional family values or oppose gay marriage or whatever. And this, too, has proved to be a very successful fundraising technique. Of course, it doesn't take very much to get onto the SPLC's list. As I pointed out, most of the groups, the traditional values groups, in fact, are there mostly because of their ideological views, and they're very upfront about that. And there's a large constituency of people who are willing to believe that these groups are promulgating hate ought to be suppressed, essentially.
And in one section of your expose, Charlotte, talking here with Charlotte Allen, writer of a expose piece on the SPLC entitled King of Fearmongers, and basically gets her thesis that the Southern Poverty Law Center is just raising money by stirring up this irrational fear of white supremacist groups, militias, and pro-family groups. It's nothing more than a shameless fundraising scam. And you talk about the fact they targeted the FRC, Family Research Council. Floyd Corkins went in there last year to try to shoot up the place, drawing his information about the FRC from the SPLC, same list that we're on. And the point you made, look, as you looked into what the FRC says about the homosexual lifestyle, homosexual marriage, you correctly identified that, look, there's no hate here. This is simply a difference of opinion. This is simply disagreement over whether homosexuality ought to be normalized and whether homosexual marriage ought to be legalized. That's just a matter of disagreement. It's not a matter of hatred.
Yes, that's absolutely correct. And when I talked to one of their spokesman, their main spokesman, Mark Potok, about this, and he's very upfront, of course, that they are not trying to. They say they're not trying to suppress these groups. They're simply trying to point out what they're saying. And when I asked him specifically about the issue of differences of opinion, he claimed that they were spreading lies about gays and so forth, and he named a couple of studies. When I looked up on the Family Research Council website, I found no such studies listed on their website. In fact, found some scholarly articles that backed up one of their positions, which is that gay men are disproportionately represented among child sexual abusers. And they've got studies. They have studies not produced for them, but for reputable scholarly journals that back up what they say. The SPLC has a different set of studies that comes to different conclusions. What we're basically talking about is a difference of opinion, a difference of attitude toward the morality and propriety of gay marriage. And certainly none of that, as far as I can see, qualifies as hate. It's simply a difference of opinion, and these groups, such as your own, are trying to educate the public and persuade people of the correctness of your position, just as other groups are doing the same thing for their side.
Now, you quote an excerpt from a blog post in 2007 for Harper's Magazine, which is a pretty left-wing publication. And this is a piece written by Ken Silverstein, I'm not sure how he says his last name. And here's a quote: "What the SPLC does best is to raise obscene amounts of money by hyping fears about the power of right-wing fringe groups. Hence, the SPLC has become the nation's richest civil rights organization." And there are two things I want to be sure we get to, Charlotte, before we finish our conversation. One, a obscene fundraising machine, richest civil rights organization. And you refer to what Charity Watch has done in grading the SPLC and why. Tell us about that.
Well, the Charity Watch, which is a kind of watchdog for philanthropic organizations, has consistently given the SPLC an F grade because it spends so little of what it raises, so that it's stockpiled. It now has $256 million in unspent assets. That is, when you send your money in, relatively little of it, they say like about 18% is actually going toward any activities, any legal law center type activities. The bulk of it is just sitting there being invested. So in fact, what you're basically contributing to is the continued and ever-increasing wealth of the SPLC. And that's what Silverstein, who certainly was writing from a very ultra-liberal point of view, was complaining about, and he's not the only one.
And one of the striking instances of their fundraising, and what a lot of people would find almost reprehensible, is you talk about their most striking legal victory in the South. They got a $7 million judgment in 1987 against the United Klans of America. And so tell us a little bit about that court case and the woman that they represented, and what the SPLC got out of that court case, and what the woman got out of the court case, the mother of the victim.
Oh yeah, I mean it's pretty shocking. The group, some members of the group had lynched a black man. That's uncontroverted. So the SPL sued on behalf of the mother and got this $7 million judgment against them. But of course, by that time, the United Klans of America was just nothing. Its only asset was a rundown warehouse that was finally sold for $51,000. That's all that mother ever saw of the money. Meanwhile, the SPLC had been using that lawsuit for over a year and had raised $9 million. They would send out pictures of the murder victim, and lots of fundraising rhetoric, and they raised $9 million for themselves off that case. And the poor woman just got her $51,000.
Wow.
The grieving mother.
And
and they're still using that case. They bring that case up over and over again to this very day.
And we got about 60 seconds here, Charlotte. One last comment. I want you to talk about the research of Laird Wilcox, who is a political liberal. He lives in Olathe, Kansas, and he's done some research into SPLC and all of these groups that they have listed on their website as hate groups.
Oh, yeah, most of them actually, he can't even find them. He's been tracking hate groups for like 5 decades, has a huge archive that now belongs to the University of Kansas. He can't find half the groups on their list. He says local police will call him up and they'll say, well, what about this group? And he'll say, and it'll maybe have a post office box, and he'll say, I can't verify that this group even exists. It might be like 2 guys or 1 guy on a computer, 1 guy and his dog and his computer.
So last question, Charlotte. I got 30 seconds. What's your assessment of whether the SPLC is a credible source for identifying hate groups in America, especially pro-family groups?
I mean, it's easy for me to say absolutely not. Ask Laird Wilcox. Read my article. See what their criteria are. Basically, either the groups don't exist or they're certainly not hate groups by anybody's definition.
Our guest has been Charlotte Allen, investigative journalist, frequent contributor to the Weekly Standard, the Wall Street Journal, Los Angeles Times. Great article on the Weekly Standard, April 15, King of the Fearmongers, exposing the SPLC as nothing more than a shameless fundraising scam. Charlotte, thank you for taking time to be with us.
Okay, well, thank you. It was great.
Focal Point AFR Talk.